Alright, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the Coin API to get the latest assets from the crypto world, and we're going to build a small list in iOS to display all the different assets by their name. First, you need an API key, so you'll go to coinapi.io and you get a free API key in your mail. Once you have that, you can start browsing the API documentation. You go to REST API and the metadata section, and here list all assets is the endpoint that we want. Very well documented REST API. I recommend using this while you're practicing. They give you the endpoint URL. I like to check these in PAW, which is the same as Postman, but better. They want you to provide one header. So the header name is Xcoin API key, and then you're going to use your own API key that they gave you in the mail. You can use mine, but you should use yours. It's just simpler that way. Once you do, you'll get a response of 16,000 different crypto assets. So quite many. So these include Bitcoin, Ethereum, Dogecoin, whatever. Now that we have this, we're going to start building our iOS app. I already pre-made it, so it's called Crypto Bro app, because of course it is. And first, we need our model. This is going to be called asset, as one asset. If we look at the JSON response, it looks like this. We get an array back, a bunch of these objects. So now we will map that into Swift, and it needs to be codable since we're dealing with JSON, and since we are building a Swift UI app, you also want to have the identifiable protocol here, and that requires the ID field. What we really care about here is the name. So we only care about the name, and that is of type string. Something else, I guess we can also have the start date. We're gonna convert those into snake case, even though they are lowercase here. We're gonna use the JSON decoder to do that. Next, we're gonna build our service class. So Coin API service. This is gonna have an async await method called assets. It's gonna throw, and it's gonna return us an array of assets. I'm gonna use a pre-made enumeration of HTTP errors that I use in all my projects. So we're gonna throw out each of these from the method if something goes wrong. You'll see soon. Next, we're gonna build up the URL from the URL components API. It starts with the scheme, which is HTTPS. Next, we want the host, which we get from PAW. The path /v1/assets. Finally, we will check if we have a valid URL from the components.url. If not, we will throw an HTTP error, bad URL. Then we define a request of type URL request with the URL. To this request, we add a header with the value of our API key and the name Xcoin API key. We define our data response tuple and use URL sessions shared data method for request. Check the HTTP response that everything is good. If not, throw out an error of a bad response. And this needs to be try await. Next, we switch over the HTTP response. I have a predefined thing that I use. This lists out all the different cases of HTTP errors or non-errors and throws out the appropriate HTTP error regarding that. Next, we define our JSON decoder because we need to customize it a bit. So the key decoding strategy needs to be convert from snake case. And now we can use that decoder here to decode an array of assets from the data that we got back here. Next, we will test this out. When the first view comes into view, we will simply wrap this in a task. It is a do catch because our method is throwing. Now we can try by printing out the result of our method. If not, we will print the error. And now when we run the app, we have something in the debugger. Key not found, data start. This needs to be an optional because not all of them have a data start field, so some of them can be nil. Then we need a view model. This is going to be a observable object so that Swift UI can update itself. It will have a published property called assets, and we will initialize it as an empty array. It'll have a private method called assets, which is async, and we will define the service here. And inside the assets method, we will call the assets service, and we will set the local assets array with the result of this one and await. And since this is a try, we need to do a catch block to catch any errors. So we handle all the errors in the view model and not the view layer. This can be expanded upon if needed. And when this view model initializes, we will run this inside a task, await assets, and this will then populate assets, and that will then update the Swift UI view. Here at the root of the app, we will define a state object, Coin API view model, and in the content view, it has it is observing this object. We don't initialize it here. We just tell it what type of VM it's looking for. And then here we do Coin API VM. And then here we make a list and use the data, so the assets. And for each asset, we want a text component with the asset and its name. And now when we run the app, this needs to use the model that we defined above. And finally, we forgot to put the main actor for this method to ensure that our UI is updated on the main thread. And now when we run the app, we see a list of cryptos listed nicely.